Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. Book 2, School Days, page number 33 up to 39. Form 3, first term lesson. Let's see the contents. Contents: writer, objectives of the lesson, characters, revision of book 1, summary of book 2, themes, styles, techniques, questions and further referring. Objectives: read, understand and respond to text. Analyze language, form and structure. Understand the relationship between text and the context in which they were written. Technical accuracy. This is about writer Mary Ann Evans. She was born on 22nd of November 1819. She is an English novelist, journalist, translator and one of the leading writers of the Victorian era. So her novels are well known for realism and psychological perceptions. She used a male pen name, George Eliot, to ensure her works being taken seriously and also to shield her private life from public scrutiny. Characters: Maggie THULLIVER. So this is the protagonist of the story. So Maggie is the very intelligent, very conflicted protagonist of the Mill on the Floss. When the novel begins, she is young, clever, imaginative, adoring of her brother and always getting into trouble. As she grows up, she regularly feels conflicted between acting how her extended family and community would want her to and following her own desires. Mr. THULLIVER. Mr. THULLIVER is Maggie and Tom's father. At the beginning of the novel, he is the owner of Dorlcote Mill, which has been in his family for generations. He is proud of Maggie's intelligence, although he isn't sure what use it will be to a girl. Tom THULLIVER. Tom is Maggie's older brother by 4 years. He is athletic, prideful, obsessed with justice and usually rather unforgiving. Now this is about Mrs. THULLIVER. So she is Maggie and Tom's mother. So she is very simple, and though she loves her children, she greatly favors Tom and wishes Maggie were blonder and simpler herself. Setting of the novel. The novel is set in the English country in the 1st and 19th century. The characters move from Dorlcote Mill to the small town of St. Ogg's in the white plain where the river flows hurries on. Mary Ann Evans wrote The Mill on the Floss during the Victorian era, a period characterized by an economic prosperity and a colonial and commercial expansion. Critical analysis of Book 1. This book deals with the childhood of Maggie THULLIVER and her brother Tom. It presents of one of most striking studies of childhood in all fiction. George Eliot's descriptive skills is evident in the evocative lines on the setting of the novel. The river, the rich posture, the wagons, horses and the mill itself. This book gives a moving chronicle of Maggie's childhood disappointment. There is an autobiographical element in the account of childhood suffering. Poor Maggie is constantly scolded by her mother, unkindly treated by her aunt, and callously treated by her brother from whom she loved. Summary of Book 2, Chapter 1. This is the chapter that we are focusing on. So, at King's Lorton, the house of Mrs. Telling, Tom is miserable. So, that means he's not interested in studying, of course, here now. He had enjoyed playing with the other boys at his old school. So, but under the care of Mr. Stelling, he has no other schoolmates. His schooling is also now much more difficult as it requires the study of Latin, when Tom really preferred working at Dorlcote Mill. Rev Stelling is an ambitious man who hopes to rise in the rank of the church. He spends much more than he earns in order to maintain himself and Mrs. Stelling in great style. He hopes to find more pupils to increase his income. So he wants Tom to progress quickly in his studies to attract other students. Mr. Tulliver has sent Tom to Mr. Stelling so he can get a good education. But Tom finds that knowledge is not much valued at King's Lorton. Mr. Stelling is focused on his career and has lavish taste. So he takes in pupils for financial benefit rather than because he is passionate about teaching. He also sees Tom as a walking advertisement for his school. He wants Tom to progress in his studies so that Mr. Stelling can attract more students, not because he cares a great deal about Tom's education. Tom does not understand Mr. Stelling's jokes, like a pun on the Latin word for roast beef, which make him feel silly. Mr. Tulliver and Mrs. Tulliver were pleased with the Stelling when they brought Tom to King's Lorton, but it soon becomes apparent that Tom is entirely unsuited for Mr. Stelling's brand of education. Tom has no talent for Latin and little understanding of who the Romans were, and Mr. Stelling considers Tom very dull. Tom wishes he could please his tutor and prays at night to remember my Latin. Mr. Stelling thinks Tom is ignorant and very dull, and it is indeed true that Tom is far from an exemplary student, but Mr. Stelling too is ignorant of the needs of his pupil and of the duties of an educator more broadly. He lacks the imagination to engage Tom in his schooling. Furthermore, because he has a narrow understanding of knowledge, he failed to see that Tom might have other skills in, say, practical education that might be worth cultivating as well. Because the Stelling don't want to pay for a second nurse, they use Tom to watch their oldest child, Laura. Tom plays with the little girl but longs for a friend closer to his own age. He is pleased when Maggie arrives for a 2-week visit, promising to help him learn his geometry and Latin. Maggie and Tom visit Mr. Stelling's study, where he shows her his textbooks. The unfamiliar words fascinate Maggie. Mr. Stelling responds that he thinks girls are quick but shallow. Although Tom has been far from successful in school, he is still eager to show that he can do something that his sister can't. Although Maggie clearly has more natural aptitude for reading and learning, both Tom and Mr. Stelling are dismissive of women's intellectual abilities. Mr. Stelling's claim that women's quickness is actually a mark against them because it makes them shallow demonstrates that 19th century British society was invested in restricting women's access to education. Themes: gender disparity. The gender disparity in the world of the mill on the floss is vital to understanding Maggie's story. She is an intelligent and fascinating woman, but the world she is born into offer nothing for her to do with her talents. The difficulty of choice. Throughout the mill on the floss, the individual is pitted against the community, especially in reference to Maggie THULLIVER. Progress versus tradition. The tension between progress and tradition is central in the mill on the floss. There is a clear distinction between generation in the novel. Style. Dialect. A notable feature of Eliot's writing, her use of local dialects. For example, Mr. Tulliver tells his wife, "What I want is to give Tom a good education. I should like Tom to be a bit of scholar so as he might be up to the tricks. Oh, these fellows as talk fine and write with a flourish." Questions to be done throughout these slides. You can find the answers. Most probably, why did Tom feel he was somehow all wrong at Mr. Stelling? And also, Mr. Tulliver was not of good cheer at Christmas. Why? So, first of all, read the chapter. And also, you can watch the presentation. And then get your support of the slides and then the book. Further referring, there are 2 videos. You can watch them leisurely and also get some ideas about the particular chapter. Thank you, children. Have a nice day.